Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of the Heart Facts. I'm delighted to be able to report to you today that I am 2 days free of angina. Yoo-hoo! I can't believe it, it's just wonderful, great news. But first of all, the feedback I've got from my first episode has been marvellous, and I've been asked to summarise about myself, which I'll do today, but only make it relevant to what I think has contributed to my coronary heart disease. I grew up in the beautiful Vale of Tralee in County Kerry, Ireland. I played competitive basketball morning, noon and night when I was living there. I'm still a mad supporter of the Kerry football team, the Munster rugby team, and I also follow Garvey's basketball team from Tralee. I got married very, very young, and we had a beautiful boy and a girl. We used to call it the Proddy family at the time. I studied computer science in NIHE, which was the National Institute of Higher Education, and it's known as University of Limerick today. Then I started working for corporate America as a programmer, as an assembler programmer on an IBM 370-135. I travelled the world, made great money, and ultimately, I became the McGraw-Hill Chief Technologist for Multimedia. I was based in head office, the McGraw-Hill building, Avenue of Americas in New York, answering to a gunslinger, and he was the Chief Technologist and an awful bully. Corporate America pays you very, very well, but they also make sure that they get their pound of flesh out of you. I hated the politics. And I decided to jump ship, and I joined a .com because the .com was the big thing at the time. I missed out on Woodstock, and I joined a company called Womex. It gave me the opportunity to return to Ireland as their vice president for Europe. In Womex, we raised 30 million. And blew it all in 3 years, and it bellied up. So I was back in Ireland with my tail between my legs and no job and very, very little money, because I was always well able to spend money, and like there was no tomorrow. I couldn't go back to working for corporate. So I had no choice really but to start my own company. And I started a company called Red Circle Technologies. We were doing software development for the telcos, the major telcos, using voice recognition software. And we were doing really good. We developed some fantastic applications. But the problem was cash flow. And in the meantime, I was trying to put food on the table and keep the wolf from the door by having to pay for programmers and rent and so on. And I was very close to bellying up as well myself, and that was a scary time, to be honest with you. I had already had one scar on my back, and I really didn't need another one. But anyhow, look at it, that this check magically came in the door, and it was for 6,000. I can't remember if it was punts or euros at the time, but anyway, and it was a lifesaver. It came about as a result of an application that we had for ringtones and logos. We said, let's just put the focus on this ringtones and logos, and then ringtones and logos started to take off. I had a friendly bank manager in Limerick at the time, and with very little effort, he believed in me, and he gave me 20 grand, and the 20 became 40, 40 became 80. After 4 or 5 years, we were spending $1 million a month and doubling and trebling our money. And as a matter of fact, when I sold it about 5 years later, we were turning over 32 million a year, and we had 35 people employed in Dún Laoghaire. I worked hard and I played hard. Not quite as bad as the Wolf of Wall Street, but not far off, I suppose. And I loved every minute of it. But after a while, I started to get dizzy spells, and had to go to this neurologist in Vincent's Hospital in Dublin at the time. And he said that I had vasculitis of the central nervous system, and that he wanted to put me on chemo and drill a hole in my forehead and do biopsies and do all sorts of crazy things. So I said no. As soon as I felt healthy enough, I just got the hell out of there. And I think his last words were that if I didn't follow his program, that I would be dead in 6 months. So anyway, I got a second opinion from another neurologist, an eminent doctor in London, and who said that I was basically needed to slow down, that I was burning the candle at both ends with a blowtorch, and that the shutters just basically came down. I just got so much better. I felt great after a while, so I was really lucky. Anyhow, after 7 years, I sold the company for a ton of money and retired to Marbella for the good life. And I've been here 16 years now. The good life in Marbella isn't good either unless you control it. I got back to my old ways of burning the candle at both ends with a blowtorch. It took me 5 years to really realize, that I needed to cop myself on and appreciate what I had, and focus on my children, my family, and my friends, and appreciate Marbella for the wonderful place it can be without all the drink and carousing. But 11 years after moving to Marbella, I got the heart attack. I guess it was just a matter of time, really. I was overweight, 15 kilos overweight. I was feeling crap for about a year beforehand, but I ignored the symptoms, So when I was on the flat of my back in hospital, recovering from the double bypass, I started researching alternatives to being dependent on the cocktail of drugs that I knew they were going to dispense as a result of the heart attack. And that's when I came across Dr. Eshelstyn. Gave him a buzz, believe it or not, from the hospital. And the man was so good. He spent an hour on the phone with me, going over everything, and told me that plant-based nutrition is the only cure long-term for coronary heart disease. So 3.5 years later, I'm doing what he advised me to do way back then. I mean, Dr. Eshelstyn's, advice did go in, but it just seemed too draconian at the time. However, after getting arrhythmia and 2 stents, after a double bypass, I realized that things were, the graph wasn't going in the right direction, and I needed to take it much more seriously and do something about it. So only 3 weeks ago, probably nearly 4 weeks now, I emailed Dr. Eshelstyn once more, and he came back, and again he just reiterated that the plant-based diet was the only cure. And he pointed out to me that, I sent him my diet, and he pointed out to me that I had to stop eating avocado. It was full of fat. I had to stop using all oils, including olive oil, again full of fat, and that at the stage that I was at, I had to stop eating nuts because, again, they were full of fat. But I was eating vegan cheese. I was eating the Rebel burger. I was eating the Beyond burger. I was eating a lot of stuff that, had nuts and oil. So it's amazing, you become addicted to fatty foods, and even if when you go vegetarian, you gravitate towards the fatty stuff because that's what we grew up with. So I had to get used to that. It's amazing how I was having avocado and tomato on toast almost for breakfast every morning. So now I've gone back to my good old porridge again. So to summarize, I've had 2 divorces, hugely stressful, and especially in relation to the kids, whom I've always adored, and tried to mind as much as possible, but a lot of pain. I've moved so many times it's impossible to count at this stage. I've lived a crazy life in the fast lane, working for corporate America, the .com, and starting my own business, all very, very enjoyable. But at the same time, I'm sure it's taken its toll in some shape or form. And the point I want to make here is that it's not all about the diet only. The diet is very, very important, but we also have to get our lives balanced properly. So family time, time with our friends, our own time, time to meditate, time to exercise, all extremely important. But what's also very, very important is that we've got to minimize our stress levels, and then go on, make sure that we have the plant-based diet. On the other hand, I don't regret a minute of my life. I consider myself very, very lucky. I've had 3 long-term loving relationships. I have 3 wonderful children, 2 girls and a boy. We're very, very close. We're a very tight-knit family. I have a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law who I think are absolutely fabulous. And I have 5 grandchildren. I have great friends. New love of my life is Georgiana. We've been together 12 years now, and we're as happy as pigs in shite. Our passion is sailing, and I reckon I'd be dead today without her. She's determined to get me healthy and strong, and not to mention her tasty, wonderful cooking and recipes. So that's about it for today. This has been a long one. I'm sure it's around 10 minutes. Future episodes I'm going to keep to 3, 4, 5 minutes max. That's about it. Okay, so adios amigos, and see you in my next episode, which again I will try and do 1 a week. Subscribe.